Have you ever set a really important goal for your life? You then got excited, you got motivated, you got all pumped up and ready to achieve it, and then you found that you went about your daily life and were disappointed when nothing ended up happening. If we haven't met before, I'm Shelley from Taming Frenzy, and today we're going to talk about the dirty little secret that a lot of times is not discussed when people talk about how to achieve your goals. Most of us have done this. We've set some important goal for ourselves, say the goal of losing 30 pounds. We got excited, we told ourselves we were going to start exercising every day, we were going to cut out soda and junk food, and we were going to start eating healthier foods, and then nothing. That's because we didn't take one very important thing into consideration before we started working on the goal, and that is the question of what were we willing to give up in order to achieve the goal. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you've got some big goals and dreams for yourself, you're going to have to ask yourself, what are you willing to give up in order to turn those goals and dreams into reality? Because achieving any kind of goal in our life requires some sort of change in our behavior or in our surroundings. Because in order to achieve one thing, you're going to have to give up something else. It's kind of like a scale. You've got to balance things out. For example, the goal of losing 30 pounds isn't going to just magically happen because you wrote it down on a sheet of paper. Boy, do I wish. We know that in our heads, but somehow it ends up not coming out in our actions. No, in order to lose weight, some things are going to happen. Short of a miracle happening overnight, you're going to have to give up some things. For example, you might have to give up the chocolate chip cookies each night as you sit down to watch the news. You might have to change the foods that you eat and prepare each day. After all, eating pasta 3 times a day is probably not going to help your weight loss goal. You may have to give up the comfort of sitting on the couch and watching TV for hours on end. And you may have to accept the discomfort that comes along with exercising. You may find you have to change the way that you socialize if a lot of the social events that you're involved in involve going out to dinner or having snacks with friends. You may have to realize that you may end up paying more at the grocery store. After all, proteins and fruits may cost more than just buying junk food. If your goal is to tone up and to get in shape, you may have to accept the discomfort that comes along with getting off the couch and actually exercising. You may have to forfeit sleep so that you can get up earlier in the morning before you start your day. Or you may find that you need to give up staying up late and reading that book or watching that TV program so that you do have the energy to get up early and exercise. You're going to have to be willing to get hot and sweaty as you exercise. You may have to accept getting blisters on your feet or having sore muscles. And another example, if your goal is to write a book, you're going to have to give up some other activities so that you give yourself the time to actually sit down and write the book. After all, that book's not going to write itself. You'll have to be willing to step outside of your comfort zone, be willing to accept possible rejection, and to accept the very real fact that there are people who are not going to like your story, no matter how good it may be. If your goal is to go back to school, you're going to have to accept the fact that you're going to have to give up some leisure activities and some family time. You're going to need to be willing to spend evenings, weekends, vacation time doing the schoolwork, reading assignments, working on projects, writing papers. I basically gave up all TV for several years when I went back to school and worked on my doctorate. If you want to start an online business, you're going to have to be willing to spend some money and to learn new things and to risk failure. You'll have to accept the fact that there are going to be many new skills that you're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to be willing to put the time and effort in to learn those new things and then to apply them in your new business. You may have to cut some socializing time with friends so that you give yourself the hours you need to do the work it takes to set up an online business. If your goal is to downsize to a smaller home, you're going to have to be willing to give up some of your possessions, possibly even some of those sentimental possessions, and that can be really hard. You may have to be willing to sacrifice the status that comes along with having a big house. You also may find that you have to be willing to relocate to someplace else, a different neighborhood, a different town, possibly even a different state. And that may mean that you have to be willing to give up some relationships with neighbors, with friends, or with family as there becomes more distance involved. Basically, to achieve most any goal requires some sacrifice of either time, money, comfort, leisure activities, or possibly even relationships. In order to achieve anything important, there's going to be some other trade-off that has to take place. And that is the dirty little secret that people often don't tell us when they talk to us about getting motivated and achieving some kind of big goal. Or maybe they just kind of mention it in passing, and so it's a surprise then when we realize that we are going to have to make some sacrifices to turn those goals and dreams into reality. But anything worth achieving is worth making some sacrifices for. The question simply is, how badly do you want to achieve this goal, and what are you willing to give up in order to make it happen? And if you find that you are not willing to make the sacrifices, there's no shame in that either. Take that little piece of knowledge that you've learned about yourself, own it. Don't beat yourself up over it. I ended up not finishing that doctorate because something happened in my life and I was no longer willing to make the time sacrifice that it was going to take to make it happen. Something else became more important, and that's okay. We all end up making choices. I hope you'll watch the rest of the videos in this series on achieving goals, and until next time, let's all tame some frenzy.